The space between stars was supposed to be empty, but today it was crowded with death. 300 warships hung in the darkness like a swarm of metal insects, their weapons armed and ready. The Zrathian hegemony fleet stretched across the void in perfect formation, each vessel painted in the traditional crimson and gold of their empire. They had controlled this region of space for over 2,000 years. Nothing challenged them here. Nothing dared. Commander Vexlar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, and felt satisfaction warm his chest. His 4 eyes tracked the small vessel on the main display screen. It was pathetic, really. A single human ship, barely larger than a cargo hauler, drifting toward their position with what seemed like complete ignorance of the danger it faced. "Magnify the image," Vexlar ordered, his voice carrying the clicking accent of his species. The screen shifted, bringing the human vessel into sharp focus. Vexlar's mandibles clicked together in what passed for laughter among his kind. The ship was a mess. Hull plates of different colors showed where repairs had been made with whatever materials the humans could find. Scorch marks from old battles covered its surface. One of the engine nacelles looked slightly bent, as if it had been damaged and never properly fixed. "They call that a warship?" his tactical officer asked, genuine confusion in his voice. Across the fleet, similar conversations were happening. The Zrathians had brought allies for this patrol. Ships from the Kelnar Collective, the Vraxis Union, and a dozen other species floated among the hegemony vessels. All of them were now focused on the lone human craft. Communication channels filled with laughter and mocking comments. "The apes have learned to fly," someone said over the open channel. "Barely," another voice added. "Look at that ship. I've seen better engineering from children." Vexlar allowed the mockery to continue for a moment. Humans were new to the galactic community. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 20 years ago, and in that time they had impressed exactly no one. Their technology was primitive. Their ships were slow. Their weapons were laughably outdated. They still used kinetic projectiles, for crying out loud, when the rest of the galaxy had moved to energy weapons centuries ago. The human vessel came to a stop exactly 5,000 kilometers from the hegemony formation. That took some skill at least, Vexlar admitted privately. Their navigation was adequate. "They're hailing us, Commander," the communications officer reported. "Put them through. Let's hear what the apes have to say." A human face appeared on the screen. It was a female. Vexlar had learned to recognize the differences, with dark skin and hair pulled back in a tight knot. Her uniform was simple, dark blue with silver insignia. Her eyes were calm, showing no fear despite facing a fleet that could turn her ship into vapor in seconds. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth Space Navy vessel Defiance. We are on a peaceful journey through this region and request safe passage through hegemony space." Her voice was steady, professional. Vexlar found it irritating. She should be terrified. "Captain Chen," Vexlar said, making sure his translator carried the proper tone of condescension. "You are in violation of hegemony territory. Your vessel will power down its engines and prepare to be boarded. We will study your primitive technology, and you and your crew will submit to hegemony authority." There was a pause. Captain Chen's expression didn't change. "I'm afraid we can't do that, Commander. The Defiance operates under human sovereignty. We have every right to peaceful transit through this region of space under the Galactic Council's freedom of navigation protocols." Laughter erupted across the fleet channels again. Someone made a rude comment about human intelligence. Another suggested they should simply destroy the ship and be done with it. Vexlar felt his patience wearing thin. "Captain, you seem to misunderstand your situation. You have 1 ship. I have 300. Your options are surrender or death. There is no third choice." "There's always a third choice, Commander," Chen replied calmly. The audacity was remarkable. Vexlar's mandibles clicked together rapidly, a sign of anger among his people. "You dare threaten the hegemony? You and your broken toy of a ship?" "No threat, Commander. Just a statement of fact." Vexlar had heard enough. He cut the communication channel and turned to his weapons officer. "Power all weapons. Target their engines first. I want them alive to learn their lesson." Across the fleet, 300 warships activated their weapon systems. Energy buildup lit up the darkness as plasma cannons charged. Missile tubes opened like hungry mouths. Shield generators hummed to full power. The amount of firepower focused on the single human vessel could have destroyed a small moon. On the Defiance's bridge, Captain Chen watched the threat displays light up like a festival. Her crew was silent, waiting for orders. She had known this moment would come. Earth had sent her out here specifically for this reason. Humanity needed to know how the galaxy would respond to their presence. Now they had their answer. The aliens thought humans were weak. They thought human technology was primitive. They thought one small ship posed no threat. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Chen took a slow breath and touched the communication panel. "All stations, this is the captain. Execute protocol Prometheus on my mark." Her weapons officer looked up, eyes bright with anticipation. Finally, Chen allowed herself a small smile. The aliens wanted to see what humans could do. Very well. They would get a demonstration they would never forget. She pressed the button. "Gentlemen, ladies, light them up." The Defiance's engines flared bright blue and the ship surged forward directly at the Hegemony flagship. 300 alien crews watched in confusion as the human vessel accelerated toward certain death. What were these primitives thinking? They were about to find out. The first second was confusion. The Defiance didn't run away or try to dodge. It flew straight at Commander Vexler's flagship like a missile. The alien crews hesitated, fingers hovering over firing controls. This didn't make sense. Was it a suicide run? Were the humans that insane? The second brought the first warnings. Sensor stations across the Hegemony fleet started screaming alerts. The readings coming from the human ship were impossible. The power signature was climbing higher and higher, far beyond what a ship that size should be able to generate. Energy readings were going off the scale into numbers that didn't make sense. "What is that?" Vexler demanded, staring at his tactical display. His science officer's voice shook. "Commander, their reactor signature is increasing exponentially. The readings suggest they're generating a gravitational field equivalent to a small star. That's impossible. A ship that size can't contain that much power." The third second was when reality broke. The Defiance released something from its hull. Small objects, no bigger than escape pods, shot out in all directions. They looked harmless. They were anything but. The fourth second was when the first Hegemony ship died. A cruiser fired its main plasma cannon at the approaching human vessel. The bolt of superheated energy lanced through space, bright enough to blind unprotected eyes. It should have hit. The range was perfect. The aim was true, but the plasma bolt curved. It bent in midair like light around a black hole, spiraling into one of the small objects the Defiance had released. The plasma vanished into nothing, swallowed completely. What just happened? Someone shouted over the communication channel. The fifth second brought understanding and terror. The small objects the Defiance had released weren't weapons in any traditional sense. They were singularities, tiny controlled black holes. Humanity had learned to create and contain miniature black holes and was using them as weapons. The concept was insane. Every species in the galaxy had agreed that weaponizing singularities was too dangerous. The risk of losing control was too high. Apparently humans didn't care about risk. The sixth second was chaos. 3 Zerathian cruisers found themselves too close to one of the singularities. They tried to fire their engines to pull away, but gravity didn't care about engines. The 3 ships, each massing over 50,000 tons, were yanked together like toys in a child's hands. Metal screamed. Shields collapsed. The ships crumpled, crushed by forces their designers had never imagined they would face. The 7th second was when the Defiance opened fire with its main guns. They were railguns, primitive kinetic weapons that the aliens had dismissed as outdated. But these railguns were different. The projectiles were accelerated using the same gravitational technology, reaching speeds close to the speed of light. The aliens had designed their shields to stop energy weapons. Energy could be dispersed, reflected, absorbed. But a solid projectile moving at near light speed didn't care about energy shields. It went through them like they weren't there. A Kelnar destroyer simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, the next there was an expanding cloud of debris and vapor. The railgun round had hit it dead center, transferring so much kinetic energy that the ship exploded from the inside out. The 8th second brought panic. Ship captains across the fleet started shouting orders. Some tried to return fire. Some tried to run. Some froze, unable to process what they were seeing. Their formations fell apart as discipline broke down. Ships moved into each other's firing lines. Collision alarms blared as vessels came too close together. Vexler watched his fleet dissolve into confusion and felt ice in his blood. This wasn't a battle. It was a slaughter. The human ship danced between his vessels, somehow moving faster than its specifications said it could. Those singularities provided propulsion too, he realized. The humans were using gravitational fields to pull themselves around, ignoring the normal rules of thrust and inertia. The 9th second was when the Defiance demonstrated its close-range weapons. Avrax's frigate got too close, trying to ram the human ship in desperation. Energy beams lashed out from the Defiance's hull. Not plasma or lasers, but something else. The beams touched the Vrax's ship and its hull started to age. Metal corroded in seconds. Welds failed. Electronics died. The ship fell apart from rapid decay, as if centuries had passed in moments. "They're weaponizing time," Vexillar's science officer whispered. "They're using localized time acceleration fields as weapons." The 10th second brought the first lull. The Defiance stopped moving and hung in space, surrounded by debris and dying ships. 47 vessels from the hegemony fleet were gone, some destroyed completely, some disabled and drifting, some still technically intact but with crews too terrified to function, and the human ship hadn't been touched. Not a single shot had landed. Every attack had been deflected by those impossible gravitational fields, or had simply missed as the Defiance moved in ways that shouldn't be possible. "Captain." Chen's voice came over the open communication channel, calm and professional, as if she had just finished a routine patrol. "All hegemony vessels, this is Captain Chen. Cease fire immediately. We have disabled a significant portion of your fleet. We do not wish to kill more of you, but we will if you continue to attack. Power down your weapons." Vexillar stared at the screen showing the human captain. His mandibles hung loose in shock. 10 seconds. The battle had lasted 10 seconds and his fleet was broken. "Commander, what are your orders?" his tactical officer asked. What were his orders? Retreat, continue fighting? Neither option seemed viable. If he retreated, he would be labeled a coward. If he continued, his entire fleet would die. And die for what? To fight something that shouldn't exist? "Let them regroup," Chen said, as if reading his mind. "Take a moment. Think about what you've seen. Then decide if you really want to continue this." The communication cut off. The human ship just sat there, waiting. Around it, the wreckage of 47 warships drifted in the void. Inside the Defiance, Chen's crew was checking systems and recharging weapons. They had used only a fraction of their capability. If the aliens knew that, they would probably surrender immediately. But Chen wanted them to think about it first. She wanted the lesson to sink in. Humanity had come to the galaxy not as beggars or supplicants, but as equals. And if the established powers couldn't accept that peacefully, humanity was prepared to teach the lesson the hard way. 10 seconds had passed. The next move belonged to the hegemony. Chen hoped they would choose wisely, but she was ready either way. On Earth 20 years earlier, the Discovery had changed everything. Dr. James Morrison stood in front of the United Nations Assembly, holding a datapad that contained the most important information humanity had ever received. The galaxy wasn't empty. Thousands of intelligent species lived among the stars, connected by faster-than-light travel and united under various empires and federations. "They've been out there for thousands of years," Morrison said, "and they've been following the same technological path for most of that time. Energy weapons, plasma cannons, particle beams, force fields. They've refined these technologies to incredible levels, but they're all variations on the same basic concepts." The Secretary General leaned forward. "What does that mean for us?" Morrison smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. "It means they've all agreed on what's safe and what's not. They have rules about what weapons are acceptable, and they expect us to follow those rules. Should we?" Morrison looked at the faces around the room. Leaders from every nation on Earth stared back at him. "We're 20 years behind them in some areas. We only just figured out FTL travel, but we're ahead in others. Way ahead, because we developed our technology in isolation, without anyone telling us what was forbidden." That meeting had led to the creation of the Special Weapons Development Program. Humanity knew it was entering a galaxy full of established powers who might not welcome them kindly. Earth needed an edge, something that would make the aliens think twice before treating humans as primitives or prey. The problem was simple. Humanity couldn't outproduce the galactic empires. Earth had one world and a few colonies. The Zrathian hegemony alone controlled 47 star systems. Trying to match them ship for ship would be impossible. Humanity needed to make every ship count for 100 enemy vessels. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a physicist from Japan, proposed the solution. We stop thinking about weapons as tools for destroying ships. We start thinking about weapons as tools for controlling the fundamental forces of the universe. The other scientists looked at her like she was crazy. Explain, the project director said. Yuki pulled up a holographic display showing a black hole. The galactic species have incredible technology, but they're conservative. They avoid anything too dangerous. Weaponized singularities, time manipulation, spatial distortion. These are all theoretically possible, but the risks are high. One mistake and you could destroy yourself instead of your enemy. So they don't use them, someone said. Exactly. But we can. Yuki's eyes gleamed. We're already the underdogs. We're already taking a risk just by going out there, so why not take bigger risks? Why not use weapons they've decided are too dangerous? If we can control them, we'll have an advantage they can't match. The project director looked skeptical. Can we control them? Yuki's smile was confident. Give me 3 years and enough funding and I'll give you a ship that can fight a fleet. She had been right, but it had taken 5 years, not 3. The Defiance was the result, a testbed for every forbidden technology humanity could develop. Miniature singularities for weapons and propulsion, temporal acceleration fields, gravitational lensing for defense, railguns enhanced with gravity assist. Every system on the ship violated some galactic convention about what was safe or acceptable. Back in the present, Commander Vexillar was learning the price of galactic conservatism. He had rallied what remained of his fleet, pulling ships back into formation. 253 vessels remained combat-capable. The rest were destroyed or disabled. Those were terrible losses, but he still had numerical superiority. All ships prepare for coordinated assault, he ordered. Focus fire on that human vessel. Overwhelming firepower will penetrate any defense. It was sound tactical thinking for fighting a normal enemy. But the Defiance wasn't normal. Vexillar was about to learn just how abnormal it truly was. The hegemony fleet opened fire together. Hundreds of plasma bolts and missiles filled the space between the fleets. It was enough firepower to glass a planet. It should have been enough to destroy one small ship. The Defiance released more singularity pods, dozens of them this time. They spread out in a sphere around the human vessel. The incoming fire hit those gravitational wells and curved away, pulled into new trajectories. Missiles that should have struck head-on were yanked sideways, flying past harmlessly. Energy beams bent and scattered, their coherence lost as they passed through distorted space. A few shots made it through the defensive field. The Defiance's shields flared bright as they absorbed the hits. For a moment, Vexillar felt hope. They were damaging it. But the hope died quickly as the shields reformed, stronger than before. The human ship's defensive systems were adapting, learning from each attack. Then the Defiance deployed something new. Small objects, different from the singularity pods, shot out from its hull. They looked like mines, drifting into the space between the two fleets. Several alien ships flew past them, dismissing them as spent munitions or debris. That was a mistake. The mines activated, and the ships that had passed them suddenly slowed. Not stopped, just slowed, like they were moving through thick syrup. Inside those vessels, crews screamed as they aged rapidly. Seconds passed on their clocks while minutes passed outside. Time itself was different inside those fields. A Vraxis captain, young and ambitious, turned to his second-in-command to give an order. By the time he finished speaking, his second-in-command had gray hair and age spots. The captain looked at his own hands and watched wrinkles form across his skin. His crew was aging years in seconds. Other ships hit different mines and stopped completely, frozen in time. From the outside, they looked fine, but inside, time had stopped. Crews were trapped in a single moment, aware but unable to move or think or do anything but exist in frozen horror. Vexillar watched his fleet fall apart. These weren't weapons in any sense, he understood. The humans weren't just fighting with superior firepower. They were fighting with the fundamental forces of nature itself. They had turned physics into a weapon. Retreat, he finally ordered. All ships retreat to Rally Point Omega. The surviving ships turned and ran. But running from weapons that controlled time and gravity wasn't simple. Ships that tried to jump to FTL found their drives failing, as gravitational fields disrupted the delicate balance needed for faster-than-light travel. Others successfully jumped, only to emerge light years off course, thrown to random locations by the distorted space. Captain Chen watched them run and didn't pursue. She had made her point. Now came the second part of the plan. She opened a channel to the Hegemony flagship. Commander Vexillar, this is Captain Chen. I'm offering surrender terms. Power down your weapons and your ships can leave unharmed. Continue fighting and I will destroy every vessel in your fleet. The choice is yours. Vexillar's pride warred with his survival instinct. He was a commander of the hegemony, descended from warriors who had never surrendered, but he was also watching his fleet die against an enemy he couldn't fight. You offer mercy? He asked bitterly. I offer sense, Chen replied. This doesn't have to be a war. We can coexist peacefully. Vexillar made his decision. Pride was a dangerous thing. Commander Vexillar had built his entire career on never backing down, never surrendering, never showing weakness. His ancestors had conquered 47 star systems through strength and determination. They hadn't done it by accepting surrender terms from primitives in cobbled-together ships. No, Vexillar said, his voice hard. The hegemony does not surrender, especially not to humans. Captain Chen's image on the screen showed no surprise, no anger, just a slight sadness. I was afraid you'd say that. You should know, Commander, that what you've seen so far is not our full capability. Vexillar cut the channel. All remaining ships form up on the flagship. We attack together, concentrated fire on a single target. Nothing can withstand the combined might of the hegemony. It was a desperate plan, but it was all he had left. 50 capital ships, including his flagship, formed a tight formation. 200 support vessels arranged themselves in a protective sphere around the heavy hitters. Every weapon was charged to maximum. Every shield was at full power. It was enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. All ships fire on my command, Vexillar ordered. 3, 2, 1, fire! The concentrated barrage lit up the darkness like a newborn star. Plasma bolts, particle beams, missiles, and kinetic rounds all converged on the Defiance. The volume of fire was so intense that it overwhelmed the gravitational wells. Some shots made it through. The human ship's shields flared, flickered, and for a moment Vexillar thought they would fail. The Defiance shuddered under the impact. Alerts flashed on Captain Chen's command console. Minor hull damage on Deck 7 and 8, her tactical officer reported. Shields holding at 60%, Chen nodded calmly. They earned that hit. Now show them why it doesn't matter. Execute Prometheus. Her crew moved with practiced efficiency. Commands were entered. Safety interlocks were disengaged, and the Defiance did something that made every alien sensor operator question their sanity. The ship split apart. The hull separated along seams that hadn't been visible before, dividing into 8 distinct sections. Each section had its own engines, its own weapons, its own power source. The single ship that the hegemony had been fighting was actually 8 ships pretending to be one. Impossible, Vexillar whispered. The power readings, the mass calculations, they all indicated a single vessel. His science officer's voice shook. They were masking their true signatures, Commander. The gravitational fields distorted our sensors. We saw what they wanted us to see. The 8 sections of the Defiance spread out, surrounding the hegemony formation. Each section was smaller than the original ship, but they all carried the same impossible weapons. Singularities, time mines, gravity-enhanced railguns. Now instead of facing one enemy, Vexillar's fleet was surrounded by 8. This was the plan all along, Vexillar realized. They wanted us to commit to a full assault. They wanted us bunched together. Captain Chen's voice came over every ship's communication system. Commander, you were warned. You chose this. Don't say we didn't give you a chance. The 8 sections moved in perfect coordination, like dancers performing a choreographed routine. They released their singularity pods simultaneously, creating an interconnected web of gravitational fields. The pods positioned themselves around the hegemony fleet in a sphere, each one influencing the others. A Kelnar captain tried to fly his ship out of the formation, seeking escape. His vessel accelerated, heading for the nearest gap in the encirclement. But as he reached the edge of the sphere, the gravitational forces caught him. Multiple singularities pulled in different directions and the ship was stretched. Metal groaned. The hull cracked. The ship came apart like wet paper, torn to pieces by competing gravitational forces. They've created a gravitational cage, Vexillar's tactical officer said. Multiple overlapping fields. Anything trying to leave is pulled in different directions simultaneously. It was called the Terran Noose in human tactical manuals, though the aliens didn't know that. 8 ships creating a web of gravitational death that nothing could escape. It was humanity's answer to the question, how do you trap an enemy fleet that can jump to faster than light speeds? You make it so that moving in any direction means destruction. The only safe place was the center of the formation, where the gravitational forces balanced out. And that was exactly where Vexillar's fleet was trapped. Disable our engines, Vexillar ordered. All ships minimal power. Don't try to move. It was the smartest thing he could have done, but it came too late for many ships. Captains who panicked and tried to run found themselves pulled apart. Ships that attempted to jump to FTL had their drive cores overload, unable to cope with the gravitational stress. Within 2 minutes, another 20 vessels were gone. The 8 sections of the Defiance then demonstrated their railguns. They fired in sequence 8 rounds per second, targeting the largest ships first. The capital ships had the strongest shields, but shields meant nothing against projectiles moving at near light speed. The rounds punched through shields and armor like they weren't there. Vexillar's flagship was hit 3 times in 5 seconds. The first round penetrated the forward armor and destroyed the main plasma cannon. The second hit the port side, causing explosive decompression in 6 decks. The third round grazed the ship, but even a glancing blow at that speed caused catastrophic damage. The hull buckled and internal systems failed throughout the vessel. Emergency lighting flickered on across the Eternal Dominion. Vexillar picked himself up from where the impacts had thrown him. His bridge crew was dead or dying. Smoke filled the air, and somewhere deep in the ship alarms were screaming. "Damage report," he croaked, but no one answered. His communication system was dead. Across the fleet, the story was the same. Every capital ship was either destroyed or crippled. The support vessels were trapped, unable to help, unable to flee. The battle had lasted 43 seconds from the moment the Defiance split apart. 43 seconds to destroy the fighting power of the hegemony fleet. The railgun fire stopped. The 8 sections of the Defiance held their positions, maintaining the gravitational cage but no longer attacking. Captain Chen's voice came through on emergency channels, ensuring every ship could hear her. "This is Captain Chen to all hegemony vessels. Your fleet is defeated. Your command ship is disabled. You have 2 options. Surrender now, or I will collapse the gravitational cage and crush every ship in this formation. You have 30 seconds to decide." Vexillar tried to reach his communication console, but it was sparking and dead. He couldn't give orders. He couldn't coordinate his fleet. He couldn't do anything except watch as his officers, the ones still alive, looked to him for guidance he couldn't provide. 20 seconds passed. 10, 5. Then a voice came over the emergency channel. Not Vexillar's, but his second-in-command from one of the surviving cruisers. "Human vessel. This is Commander Zelkan of the Crimson Blade. We surrender. Please, no more killing." Vexillar wanted to rage at the surrender, but he had no way to countermand it. And truthfully, he wasn't sure he would have if he could. He had led his fleet into this disaster through pride and underestimation. At least surrender meant some of his people would live. The gravitational cage remained in place, but the pressure eased slightly. The ships trapped inside could move carefully without being torn apart. Chen's voice came again, softer now. "Wise choice, Commander Zelkan. All hegemony vessels will remain in place. Tend to your wounded. 1 ship and only 1 will be allowed to leave to carry a message back to your government." Vexillar closed his eyes. 1 ship to carry word of this humiliation. 1 ship to tell the hegemony that their mighty fleet had been destroyed by a single human vessel. 1 ship to change everything. The scout ship Whisper of Stars limped away from the graveyard, its engines barely functional, its crew traumatized beyond anything their training had prepared them for. Captain Tivera, a young Zarathian officer who had been chosen for this duty precisely because she was junior and expendable, sat in her command chair and tried not to shake. Behind her ship, the 8 sections of the Defiance were recombining, the modular components sliding back together with mechanical precision. In another moment, they would form a single vessel again, and no one would know it had ever been anything else. Except now, 230 ships knew the truth. Those that survived would spread the word. "Incoming transmission," her communications officer said quietly. "It's the human captain." Tavera wanted to ignore it, to run at full speed back to hegemony space, but she didn't dare. "Put it through." Captain Chen's face appeared on the screen. She looked tired, Tavera noticed. Not injured or stressed, just tired, like someone who had finished a difficult day's work and was ready to rest. "Captain Tavera," Chen said, using her name though they had never been introduced. "You're carrying more than just news of a battle. You're carrying a message. I want to make sure you understand it fully. Tavera's voice came out steadier than she felt. I understand that humanity has powerful weapons. That message is clear enough. Chen shook her head. That's part of it, but not all. The message is this: humanity does not seek war. We seek respect. We came to the galaxy hoping for peaceful contact, for trade and cultural exchange, for friendship. What we found was mockery and threats. Commander Vexler's fleet represents the galactic attitude toward us. You see us as primitives, as lesser beings, as something to be controlled or dismissed. Chen leaned forward, and her eyes held an intensity that made Tavera lean back instinctively. We are not primitives. We are not weak. We are different. While your species spent millennia perfecting energy weapons and shields, we went down different paths. We asked different questions. We took risks you deemed too dangerous, and because of that, we have capabilities you cannot match with your current technology. You're threatening the entire galaxy, Tavera said. No, Chen replied firmly. We're establishing our place in it. There's a difference. When you go back to your government, you tell them this: Earth has built 200 ships like the Defiance. We're building more every month. Each one can fight a fleet, as you've witnessed today. We have stationed these vessels at strategic points around human space and along the major trade routes. Tavera felt cold. 200 ships like the Defiance? The galaxy would burn. You're starting a war. Chen's expression softened slightly. We're preventing one. The Defiance was sent here knowing we would encounter hostility. This was a test, Captain Tavera. We needed to know if the galaxy would accept us as equals or treat us as prey. Commander Vexlar gave us our answer. Now we're giving ours. The transmission shifted, showing a star map. Human space was marked in blue, a small cluster of systems near the galactic rim. But spreading out from it were red dots, hundreds of them, marking the positions of human warships. We will defend ourselves, Chen continued. We will respond to aggression with overwhelming force. But we will also trade fairly with anyone who approaches us in peace. We will share our knowledge with those who share theirs. We will be partners to those who will have us as partners. Chen's face returned to the screen. Humanity learned something important in our history, Captain. We learned that the universe is not kind. We learned that survival requires strength and the will to use it. We learned that peace is only possible between equals. For thousands of years, your species and others like you have had no equals. You've set the rules, enforced the peace, and punished those who disagreed with you. That time is ending. You can't fight the entire galaxy, Tavera said. We don't have to, Chen replied. We just have to be strong enough that fighting us costs more than trading with us. We have to be dangerous enough that respect is the logical choice. Commander Vexlar chose mockery and aggression. It cost him his fleet. The next commander will choose more wisely. The transmission ended. Tavera sat in silence for a long moment before turning to her navigator. Set course for the hegemony capital. Maximum speed. The journey took 3 days. 3 days for Tavera to review the battle recordings, to try to understand what had happened, to prepare her report. 3 days to realize that everything she had known about the galactic order was obsolete. The hegemony capital was a massive station orbiting a gas giant in the home system. It housed billions of beings and served as the administrative heart of the empire. When Tavera arrived, she was immediately summoned to the High Council chamber. She stood before the 7 members of the High Council and delivered her report. She showed them the recordings. She watched their faces change from disbelief to shock to fear as they witnessed the Defiance destroy their fleet in less than a minute. This is some kind of trick, Councillor Vareth insisted. Humans are primitives. This isn't possible. I was there, Tavera said quietly. I saw it with my own eyes. The recordings are genuine. The Eternal Dominion is destroyed. Commander Vexlar is dead. 2/3 of our fleet is gone, and the humans barely used a fraction of their capability. The council chamber fell silent. Finally, the eldest councillor, a female named Ashvara who had served for over a century, spoke. What do they want? Respect, Tavera said. They want to be treated as equals, not as inferiors. They will trade peacefully with us, but they will destroy anyone who attacks them. Councillor Vareth slammed his fist on the table. We should call for a galactic coalition. Every species together can overwhelm them. Ashvara shook her head slowly. Can we? They have weapons that bend gravity and time. They have ships that split apart and recombine. They think in ways we don't understand. How many fleets will we lose trying to destroy them? How many worlds will burn? So we do nothing? Vareth demanded. We adapt, Ashvara replied. We recognize that the galaxy has changed. Humanity has arrived as a major power, whether we like it or not. We can fight them and die, or we can deal with them and live. I prefer to live. The debate raged for hours, but eventually Ashvara's wisdom prevailed. The hegemony would not seek immediate revenge. Instead, they would observe, learn, and adapt. Messages went out to other galactic powers. Emergency meetings were called. The recordings of the battle spread through the galaxy like wildfire. Some species called for war. The Vraxis Union swore vengeance for their lost ships. The Kelnar Collective demanded humanity be quarantined to their own space. But other, wiser voices counseled caution. The eldest species, those who had seen empires rise and fall, recognized the truth. Humanity had introduced something new to the galactic equation, and the old rules no longer applied. 6 months later, the first trade delegation from the hegemony arrived at Earth. They came not as conquerors or teachers, but as equals. The negotiations were difficult, but they were negotiations, not ultimatums. Humanity had earned its seat at the galactic table through strength, and now both sides were learning to coexist. On the Defiance, Captain Sarah Chen stood in her quarters and looked at the stars through the viewport. The ship had returned to Earth for refit and resupply. Soon they would go back out, continuing to patrol and protect human space. But the mission was different now. They weren't just defending against threats. They were representing humanity's place in the galaxy. Her executive officer, Commander Marcus Webb, entered the room. The new orders came through. We're heading to the Kelnar border next month. Apparently they're still making noises about revenge. Chen smiled slightly. Do you think they'll actually try something? No, Webb said confidently. They saw what happened to the hegemony. They'll bluster and threaten, but they'll back down. Everyone will eventually. Maybe, Chen said. Or maybe we'll have to fight again. But at least now they know the cost. Webb looked at her curiously. Do you think we did the right thing? A lot of people died in that battle. Chen was quiet for a moment. Commander Vexillar had a choice. He could have let us pass. He could have accepted our request for peaceful transit. Instead, he chose mockery and violence. I gave him multiple chances to back down. He refused them all. Those deaths are on him, not on us. But we knew how he would react, Webb pressed. We went there knowing it would end in violence. We went there knowing we needed to establish boundaries, Chen corrected. Could we have done it differently? Maybe. But would the result have been any different? If we had shown weakness, the hegemony would have treated us as subjects. If we had avoided them entirely, we would always be running. We chose to stand our ground and prove we couldn't be pushed around. Sometimes that's the price of respect. Webb nodded slowly. And now? Now we see if the lesson sticks, Chen said. We see if the galaxy can accept us as we are. And if not, we'll be ready for that too. The Defiance prepared for its next mission, one of hundreds of human ships now patrolling the stars. Humanity had arrived in the galaxy not with a whisper but with a roar. The old powers would have to adjust to a new reality. There was a new player in galactic politics, and this player played by different rules. In the darkness between the stars, the balance of power had shifted. The age of human expansion had begun. The stars looked different from the command deck of the Crusade hunter ship. Commander Zexkor stood tall, his scaled skin reflecting the dim red light of the bridge. His 3 eyes narrowed as he studied the blue-green planet on the main screen. Another hunting ground, he said, clicking his jaw spikes together. The scouts report primitive technology and no space defenses. The creatures look soft, weak. The hunter beside him, Sub-Commander Vril, nodded. 53 species conquered and none have resisted for long. These will be the same. The Crusade were the terror of 3 galactic arms. They stood 7 feet, tall with tough scaled skin that could deflect primitive projectiles. Their hands ended in sharp claws and their jaws could bite through metal. Evolution had made them perfect hunters, and their society was built on proving their dominance through conquest. Send a small team, Zexkor ordered. 5 hunters. Capture a few specimens from an isolated area. We will study them before the main harvest begins. Vril hesitated. Protocol suggests observation for at least 1 full planetary cycle before. I have led 12 successful hunts, Zexkor interrupted. These creatures barely have aircraft. They are nothing we haven't seen before. The small Crusade shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere under cover of darkness. Their cloaking technology hid them from the primitive radar systems of the humans. They chose a landing spot near a forest outside a small town called Pinewood. Montana Frank Miller couldn't sleep. At 53, the retired Marine often found himself awake in the early hours, memories of old battles keeping him company. He sat on his porch, coffee in hand, watching the stars. 20 years of military service had trained him to notice details. So when a shimmer moved across the night sky, blocking out stars as it passed, he noticed. "That's no plane," he muttered, setting down his coffee. Frank wasn't the only one awake in Pinewood that night. Sheriff Karen Peterson was driving back from checking on old Mrs. Winters, who had called about strange noises. Karen had served 10 years in military intelligence before returning to her hometown. She too saw something strange in the sky, but unlike the other residents of Pinewood, she didn't dismiss it as imagination. The 5 Crusade hunters moved silently through the forest. They could see perfectly in the dark with their heat-sensing vision. Their leader, Grak, had hunted on 17 worlds. "Spread out," he ordered. "Take 1 specimen each. Remember, the commander wants them alive." The aliens moved toward the sleeping town, confident in their superiority. They had never failed before. Frank was checking his shotgun when he heard his dog growl. Rex was a good German shepherd, not given to barking at nothing. Frank moved to the window and peered out into the darkness. The moonlight showed nothing unusual in his yard, but Rex continued to growl, his eyes fixed on the tree line. "What is it, boy?" Frank whispered, reaching for his flashlight. In the forest, one of the Crusade hunters paused. He had spotted a dwelling, separated from the others, an easy target. Inside, his heat vision showed one creature moving around, unaware of the danger approaching. The hunter moved closer, claws extended, anticipating an easy capture. Sheriff Peterson was driving slowly along the edge of town when her radio crackled. "Sheriff? This is Bill from the gas station. You might think I'm crazy, but I just saw something big run across the road by Miller's place. Too big to be a bear." Karen frowned. "I'll check it out," she said, turning her car toward Frank's house. She had known Frank since high school. He wasn't the type to need help, but something about tonight felt wrong. Frank was on his back porch when he heard a sound like claws on wood. He turned just as a massive shape lunged from the shadows. In the split second before it reached him, the moonlight revealed a nightmare, a tall, scaled creature with 3 glowing eyes and a mouth full of teeth. Marine training kicked in. Frank dropped and rolled as the creature crashed into the spot where he had been standing. He came up with his shotgun raised and fired without hesitation. The blast caught the alien in the shoulder, knocking it back. The Crusade hunter screamed, in surprise and pain. No prey had ever fought back so quickly, so effectively. It recovered and lunged again, this time more cautiously. Frank retreated into his workshop, mind racing. The shotgun had hurt it, but not stopped it. He needed something else. His eyes fell on his tool bench as the creature burst through the door. Sheriff Peterson heard the shotgun blast from a quarter-mile away. She hit the accelerator, grabbing her radio. "Possible shots fired at Frank Miller's place," she reported, then added, "Sending backup," though she knew the nearest deputy was 20 minutes away. Inside the workshop, Frank swung a metal pipe at the creature's head, connecting with a solid thud. The alien staggered but kept coming. Its claws raked across Frank's arm, drawing blood. Frank kicked over a can of paint thinner, then grabbed his welding torch from the bench. "Come on, you ugly bastard," he muttered. The Crusade hunter had never seen prey fight with such determination. It was confused but still confident in its superior strength. It moved forward, ready to end this strange resistance. Frank flicked the lighter and ignited the torch. As the alien lunged, he sprayed the flame across the spilled chemicals. Fire erupted between them, catching on the alien's scales. The Crusade shrieked, a sound like tearing metal, as flames engulfed its lower body. Karen pulled up to Frank's house just as an inhuman scream split the night. Gun drawn, she ran toward the workshop. What she saw through the open door froze her in place. Frank Miller facing off against a burning creature straight out of a nightmare. Frank saw Karen in the doorway. "Get down!" he shouted, as the burning alien made one last desperate attack. Frank sidestepped and used the creature's momentum to send it crashing into his workbench. Tools and chemicals rained down as the bench collapsed. The alien tried to rise once more, then went still. In the silence that followed, Frank and Karen stared at each other, then at the dead creature on the workshop floor. "What the hell is that?" Karen finally asked. Before Frank could answer, they heard more inhuman cries from the direction of town. "There are more of them," Frank said grimly, grabbing a fresh shotgun from his gun cabinet, "and I don't think they're friendly." By dawn, Pinewood was in chaos. 2 more aliens had been killed, one by Karen and several armed townspeople, another by crashing its strange vehicle while pursuing a school bus driver named Joe White. At least 5 people were missing, taken by the creatures. Everyone had seen them now, there was no hiding the truth. On his ship, Commander Zek's corps received the unthinkable news. 3 hunters dead, 2 missing, 0 specimens captured. "Impossible," he growled. "They are primitive prey." "The reports are clear, Commander," Vril said, his voice shaking. "These humans, they fight back. They use tools and tactics. They cooperate. They are unlike any prey we have hunted before." Zexcor stared at the blue planet on his screen, rage and disbelief warring in his 3 eyes. "Prepare a full assault team," he ordered. "No species resist the Crusade. We will show these humans their place in the natural order." But deep in his hunter's heart, something new stirred, a feeling the Crusade rarely experienced: fear. 6 months had passed since the night the aliens came to Pinewood. The world had changed forever. News of the attack spread quickly, first treated as a hoax, then as a terrifying reality when more ships appeared in the skies above major cities. The creatures called themselves the Crusade. They were hunters and humans were their prey, or so they thought. Colonel Alan Wright stood at the window of his Pentagon office, watching rain streak the glass. On his desk lay reports from around the world, each telling the same story. The Crusade were strong, fast, and deadly, but humans were fighting back, and often winning. "The Chicago Defense Force took down 3 more of their ships yesterday," said Dr. Lisa Hernandez from behind him. The xenobiologist had spent months studying the alien biology from recovered specimens. "They're learning to target the propulsion systems." Alan nodded. "What have you found from the latest autopsy?" Lisa placed a folder on his desk. "The Crusade evolved as ambush predators. They have incredible strength and natural weapons, but poor endurance. In a quick fight, they win. In a drawn-out battle, we have the advantage. So we're the persistence. Hunters," Alan said with a grim smile. "Our ancestors chased prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Looks like we'll do the same to these aliens." On the massive Crusade mothership orbiting the dark side of the moon, Commander Zexicor faced the holographic images of the High Hunt Council. Their displeasure was evident in the way their jaw spikes clattered. "Explain your failure," demanded the largest figure, High Hunter Morgval. "No prey species has ever resisted a proper hunt. Yet these humans have destroyed 17 hunter ships and killed over 200 warriors." Zexcor fought to control his anger. "These creatures are different. They use tools in ways we never anticipated. They coordinate their actions across vast distances. They adapt to our tactics with surprising speed." "Excuses," hissed another council member. "Perhaps we need a new hunt leader." "No." Zexcor's claws dug into his palm. "I will lead the next assault myself. I will show these humans their place in the natural order." The council members looked at each other, then back to Zexcor. "Very well. You have one final chance. Fail, and you will become prey yourself." The hologram disappeared, leaving Zexcor alone with his rage and a growing sense of doubt. In Chicago, National Guard Captain Steve Rodriguez inspected the city's new defense grid. After 3 smaller attacks, everyone knew the Crusade would return with greater numbers. This time, they would be ready. "The sonic disruptors are in place," reported his lieutenant, Debbie Martinez. Research had shown the aliens were sensitive to certain sound frequencies. "And the infrared scramblers should confuse their vision," Steve nodded approval. "And the evacuation plan?" ready to implement at a moment's notice. The underground shelters can hold most of the population. Steve had fought in Afghanistan and Iraq, but nothing had prepared him for fighting actual aliens. Yet humans were nothing if not adaptable. They learned, they prepared, and they fought with everything they had. The warning came at dawn. Radar. Stations detected multiple objects entering Earth's atmosphere, heading straight for Chicago. The city's sirens wailed as people rushed to the shelters. Steve and his forces took up their positions, weapons ready. The Crusade ships appeared in the morning sky, larger and more numerous than before. Leading them was Zexcor's personal command vessel, its red hull gleaming in the sunlight. "Let them. Come," Steve said into his radio. "Stick to the plan." The first ships landed in Grant Park, disgorging hundreds of Crusade warriors. They moved with deadly purpose, expecting the humans to flee in terror as prey should. Instead, they met organized resistance. The first trap was sprung as they advanced down Michigan Avenue. Sonic emitters hidden in the buildings activated, sending painful waves of sound that disoriented the aliens. The Crusade faltered, their coordinated attack breaking down into confusion. "Now," Steve ordered. National Guard troops opened fire from protected positions. Special ammunition designed based on Dr. Hernandez's research penetrated the aliens' scaled hide. The Crusade fought back fiercely, but found their usual tactics failing. Their infrared vision, normally an advantage in hunting, was useless against the scramblers that made all heat signatures blur together. In his command ship, Zexcor watched with growing horror as his warriors fell. This was not how hunts were supposed to go. Prey ran, prey died. Prey did not set traps and fight strategically. "Land the ship," he ordered. "I will lead the warriors myself." His second-in-command, Vril, hesitated. "Commander, the humans have adapted to our methods. Perhaps we should retreat and develop new—" "No!" Zexcor slashed his claws across Vril's face. "No prey defeats the Crusade. Land now." The command ship descended into the chaos of battle. Zexcor emerged with his elite guard, determined to show these humans the true might of a Crusade hunt leader. Steve Rodriguez saw the larger ship land and knew an opportunity when he saw one. "All units focus fire on the new arrival," he ordered. "That has to be their leader." The battle for Chicago raged for hours. The Crusade fought with savage fury, but the humans refused to break. For every building the aliens destroyed, for every human they killed, the resistance only grew stronger. People who had never held weapons before joined the fight, using whatever they could find. Construction workers operated heavy equipment as makeshift weapons. Civilians guided soldiers to flanking positions through back alleys they knew well. Zexcor had never experienced anything like it. His warriors were falling all around him, not to superior strength but to superior tactics and determination. When a human soldier got close enough to throw a grenade at his feet, Zexcor realized the unthinkable was happening. The Crusade were losing. "Retreat," he finally ordered, his pride shattered. All warriors returned to ships. The surviving Crusade fought their way back to their vessels. Many didn't make it. Those who did carried with them a new understanding of these strange creatures called humans. They were not just prey. They were something else entirely. As the alien ships lifted off, Steve Rodriguez allowed himself a moment of relief before organizing medical teams. Chicago had held, but at great cost. Buildings burned, bodies lay in the streets, and the wounded cried out for help. In the Pentagon, Colonel Wright received the news of the Chicago victory with mixed emotions. They had won a battle, but the war was just beginning. "What do you think they'll do now?" he asked Dr. Hernandez as they examined footage of the retreating ships. Lisa studied the images carefully. "They'll adapt just like we did. But now they know something they didn't before." "What's that?" "That in all their centuries of hunting across the galaxy, they've finally met a species that hunts back." On his damaged ship, Zexcor nursed his wounds and his wounded pride. For the first time in his life, he felt fear, not just for himself but for his entire species. The High Hunt Council would not be pleased, but that was the least of his concerns now. The humans would not stay on their planet forever. They would come looking for the hunters. And when they did, the galaxy would learn a terrible truth. The greatest predators in the universe had just awakened. 1 year had passed since the first Crusade ship appeared over Pinewood. The world had changed in ways no one could have imagined. Countries that were once enemies now worked together against a common threat. Scientists studied the alien technology, from crashed ships learning their secrets bit by bit, and humans had started to fight back, not just on Earth but in space. Major Susan Clark stood on the bridge of the UNS Defiance, the first human warship built with reverse-engineered Crusade technology. Through the large viewing window, Earth looked small and vulnerable, a blue marble, against the blackness of space. "Engine test complete," reported Kevin Barnes, the navigator. "All systems normal." Susan nodded. At 39, she had spent most of her career flying fighter jets. Now she commanded a spaceship with a crew of 200. Sometimes it still felt like a dream. "Weapons check?" she asked. Richard Johnson, a former artillery specialist, tapped on his console. "All weapons systems ready. The new plasma cannons are fully charged." Their mission was simple but dangerous. Find and destroy the Crusade supply ships that orbited Earth. Cut off the aliens' resources and force them to retreat. "Begin operation," Susan ordered. "Activate stealth systems." The Defiance disappeared from radar as it moved away from Earth's protective fleet. They were hunting the hunters now. Back on Earth, Frank Miller watched a new group of recruits practice hand-to-hand combat techniques. After his encounter with the first Crusade hunter, Frank had become valuable to the military. He knew how the aliens fought, how they thought. "They're stronger than us," he told the men and women in front of him. "They're faster, but they tire quickly and they don't adapt well. Remember that." The recruits nodded, their faces serious. Many had lost family to the alien attacks. All were determined to fight back. Karen Peterson entered the training room. The former sheriff now led a special tracking unit that hunted Crusade infiltrators across North America. "Frank, we've got a situation," she said. "The aliens have sent a new type of hunter team. They call themselves the Shade Stalkers. They've landed in the Rocky Mountains." Frank frowned. "How do we know this?" "We captured one of their communication devices." Dr. Hernandez translated it. "These aren't regular hunters. They're some kind of elite force. They've never failed a mission in 300 years. Frank looked at the recruits, then back at Karen. "Well, there's a first time for everything." In the dense forests of the Rocky Mountains, the Shade Stalkers moved with practiced precision. Led by the legendary Vashanar, they were the pride of the Crusade hunting forces. Their scales were darker than regular warriors, their senses more acute. "This area will serve as our base," Vashanar told his team of 12 elite hunters. "From here we will begin specialized raids against human military targets. We will show them true fear." The Shade Stalkers had studied the earlier failures. They would not repeat those mistakes. They would adapt, as hunters should. What they didn't know was that humans were already tracking them. Karen's team watched the aliens from a safe distance, using special cameras that could see through the Crusade camouflage technology. Frank studied their movements, noting how they differed from the hunters he had faced before. "They're more careful," he whispered. "More methodical." Karen nodded. "So are we. Special Forces teams are moving into position. We'll hit them tonight." In space, the UNS Defiance had found its first target, a large Crusade supply ship moving toward Earth's orbit. Susan assessed the situation carefully. "Their shields are stronger than we expected," Richard reported. "A direct attack might not work." Susan thought for a moment. Human ingenuity had gotten them this far. It would have to take them further. "What if we don't attack directly?" she said. "Kevin, can you plot a course that will take us through that debris field?" The navigator looked confused, then understanding dawned on his face. "Yes, ma'am, but it will be risky." "So is everything about this mission," Susan replied. "Let's show these aliens how humans fight." The Defiance moved carefully through the floating debris from previous battles. As they passed each large piece, they attached small explosive devices. Then they retreated to a safe distance and sent a signal. The explosion sent the debris hurtling toward the Crusade supply ship. The aliens detected the incoming threat and raised their shields, but they weren't prepared for what came next. "Fire main weapons," Susan ordered. The Defiance's plasma cannons hit the Crusade ship exactly where its shields were weakest from deflecting the debris. The alien vessel didn't stand a chance. It broke apart in a spectacular explosion. "Target destroyed," Richard reported, unable to keep the excitement from his voice. Susan allowed herself a small smile. "One down. Let's find the next one." In the mountains, the battle between Special Forces and Shadestalkers had begun. The elite Crusade hunters were indeed formidable. They moved like shadows through the trees, their natural weapons deadly in close combat. But the humans had prepared. They used sound emitters to disrupt the alien sensitive hearing. They deployed drones that confused the Crusade heat vision. Most importantly, they fought with a determination that surprised the alien hunters. Frank led a small team through the forest, setting traps and ambushes. When one of the Shadestalkers cornered them in a narrow canyon, Frank didn't retreat. "Now!" he shouted. Hidden soldiers fired nets made of special material that the Crusade claws couldn't cut. The alien warrior fell, tangled and helpless. For the first time in his long life, the hunter had become the hunted. Vashanar couldn't believe the reports coming in. Half his team was dead or captured. The humans were everywhere, using the terrain and their knowledge of the area to perfect advantage. "We must retreat," his second-in-command advised. "We can return with more warriors." Vashanar hissed in anger. Shadestalkers do not retreat. But as another explosion rocked their position, he realized he had underestimated these humans. The Bayayu Crusade had always believed themselves to be the apex predators of the galaxy. Now that belief was being challenged. In orbit, the battle had escalated. The Defiance had destroyed 2 more supply ships when a large Crusade warship appeared. Susan recognized it from intelligence reports. The personal command ship of Zexcor himself. "He's come to face us personally," Susan said, watching the massive ship approach. "All hands prepare for combat." The alien vessel was twice the size of the Defiance, with weapons that could tear through their hull. But Susan had one advantage Zexcor didn't. She knew that winning wasn't about being the strongest. It was about being the smartest. "Kevin, plot an intercept course," she ordered. "Richard, prepare all weapons. Let's show Commander Zexcor that humans aren't just prey. We're the most dangerous hunters the galaxy has ever seen." As the 2 ships closed on each other, a new chapter in the war was about to begin. The battle between the UNS Defiance and Commander Zexcor's warship was unlike anything humans had experienced before. The Crusade vessel fired weapons that left burning trails across the emptiness of space. The Defiance shook with each near miss. "Evasive maneuvers," Major Susan Clark ordered. Her voice remained calm despite the danger. "They're trying to herd us toward their secondary weapons." Kevin Barnes's hands moved quickly over the navigation controls. "They're predicting our movements too easily." Susan nodded. The Crusade thought, like hunters anticipating prey's escape routes. "Then let's be unpredictable. Execute pattern Omega-3. The Defiance suddenly cut its engines and rotated, facing the oncoming Crusade ship head-on. It was a move no prey would make, to turn and face a predator instead of fleeing. The alien ship hesitated, giving Richard Johnson the opening he needed. "Firing main cannons!" Plasma bolts struck the Crusade warship's forward section. The alien vessel shuddered but returned fire immediately. The Defiance took a direct hit to its port side. "Hull breach in Section 4, a crew member shouted. "Emergency teams responding." Susan gripped her command chair. This was the true test of humanity's resolve. On the Crusade ship, Commander Zexcor watched the human vessel with growing frustration. These creatures fought with unexpected skill. "Target their propulsion systems," he ordered. "Without movement, they are nothing." His weapons officer obeyed. But the human ship kept changing course in ways that made no tactical sense to Crusade military doctrine. They would appear to retreat, then suddenly attack. They would seem vulnerable, only to reveal it was a trap. "Commander," his second-in-command said quietly, "these humans do not fight like prey." Zexkor snarled. Then we will destroy them like enemies. The battle continued for hours, both ships taking damage. The Defiance was smaller, but more maneuverable. The Crusade warship had stronger weapons but followed predictable attack patterns that Susan quickly learned to anticipate. Finally, Susan saw her opportunity. All powered of forward shields and engines. We're going to make a run directly at them. Her crew looked at her in shock. "Ma'am, that's suicide," Richard protested. "No," Susan said with determination. "It's the last thing they'll expect. Prepare boarding teams." The Defiance suddenly accelerated toward the Crusade ship at maximum speed. Zexkor, expecting another feint, ordered evasive action too late. The human vessel scraped along the alien ship's hull, magnetic clamps engaging at key points. Special Forces troops in spacesuits cut their way into the Crusade vessel. The aliens fought fiercely but were unprepared for combat in the tight corridors of their own ship. The human soldiers had trained specifically for this scenario. Susan led the team heading for the bridge. She had studied Crusade ship layouts from captured vessels. When they encountered resistance, her team used sonic weapons that disoriented the aliens without damaging the ship's systems. On the bridge, Zexkor received reports of humans throughout his ship. This was unprecedented. No species had ever dared to board a Crusade hunter vessel. "Seal the command deck," he ordered. "Prepare for—" The doors exploded inward. Susan and her team entered, weapons ready. Zexkor looked at the small human female who led the attack and felt something he had never experienced before: respect for prey. "Commander Zexkor," Susan said, keeping her weapon trained on him. "Your ship is taken. Surrender." For a moment, it seemed the Crusade commander would fight to the death. Then, slowly, he lowered his clawed hands. "The hunt is yours," he said in the human language he had learned. "For now." Back on Earth, Dr. Lisa Hernandez made a breakthrough. With Commander Zexkor in custody, she had been able to establish more effective communication with the alien leader. "Their entire society is based on hunting," she explained to Colonel Wright as they watched Zexkor in his specially designed cell. "They divide all species into two categories, hunters and prey." "And we were classified as prey," Wright said. Lisa nodded. "Until we proved otherwise. That's what's causing such confusion in their society. We're the first species they've encountered that successfully hunts back." In his cell, Zexkor watched the humans with new understanding. His capture had been humiliating, but it had also been educational. These humans were not like any species the Crusade had encountered in their long history of conquest. When Lisa entered his cell to continue their discussions, Zexkor studied her carefully. "Your kind does not make sense to us," he admitted. "You are not physically superior. Your claws are weak. Your teeth are flat. Yet you defeat our best hunters." "We evolved differently," Lisa explained. "We don't have natural weapons, so we created them. We don't have natural armor, so we built shelters. We turned our weaknesses into strengths." Zexkor considered this. "You were prey that became predators." "We were survivors who learned to adapt," Lisa corrected. "That's more dangerous than being just a predator." The information Lisa gathered from Zexkor proved invaluable. The Crusade Empire stretched across multiple star systems. Their homeworld lay just 70 light-years from Earth. And most importantly, the High Hunt Council, which ruled all Crusade, was deeply disturbed by the reports of human resistance. Colonel Wright gathered the military leadership to share this intelligence. "We now have coordinates for the Crusade homeworld," he announced. "And we have something else. Knowledge of their psychology. They only respect strength. Negotiations won't work until we demonstrate that we can threaten them directly." "You're suggesting we take the fight to their homeworld?" a general asked. "I'm suggesting we show them that humans aren't just defending Earth. We're capable of taking the hunt to them." The plan that emerged was bold. 3 ships, the Defiance and 2 newly constructed vessels, would travel to the Crusade homeworld. Their mission was not to attack but to demonstrate humanity's reach, to force the High Hunt Council to recognize humans as equals, not prey. Frank Miller was asked to join the mission. His experience with the Crusade made him valuable, especially with Zexcor now willing to provide information in exchange for better treatment. I never thought I'd go to space, Frank told Karen, as they watched the ships being prepared. Certainly never thought I'd visit an alien planet. Karen smiled. Just another day for the people of Pinewood, right? Frank laughed. They both remembered that night a year ago when the first hunter came. How much had changed since then? As the three ships prepared for their historic journey, news came from the front lines. The Shadestalkers had been defeated in the Rocky Mountains. Earth was, for the moment, secure from major Crusade incursions. Colonel Wright looked at the final mission, reports. The next stage of this war begins now. We're no longer just defending our world. We're showing the galaxy what happens when you mistake humans for easy prey. The ships departed Earth orbit, carrying humanity's message to the stars. The hunters would soon learn that they had awakened something they never expected, a species that refused to be hunted. The journey to the Crusade homeworld took 3 weeks. The 3 human ships, Defiance, Valiant, and Challenger, traveled through space using the drive technology reverse-engineered from captured alien vessels. Frank Miller spent much of his time looking out at the stars, still amazed that a retired Marine from a small town in Montana was now part of humanity's first diplomatic mission to an alien world. "Never thought I'd see this," he said to Colonel Wright as they stood on the observation deck of the Defiance. "None of us did," Wright replied. "A year ago we didn't even know aliens existed. Now we're taking the fight to their home." In his secured quarters, Commander Zexcor provided information about his world. He had accepted his capture with a strange sense of honor. The humans had proven themselves worthy opponents, and Crusade tradition demanded respect for such enemies. "The High Hunt Council will not welcome you," he warned Dr. Hernandez during their daily session. "They have ruled for 10,000 years and they have never faced a challenge like humans." "We don't want war," Lisa insisted. "We want recognition. Respect." Zexcor made a sound that might have been a laugh. "To the Crusade, these things must be earned through strength. You cannot simply ask for them." As they approached the Crusade system, the ships detected heavy defensive arrays around the orange-red planet. Major Susan Clark ordered all weapon systems ready, but hoped they wouldn't be needed. "We're being hailed," reported Kevin Barnes from his station. A large holographic image appeared on the command deck. A Crusade elder, his scales faded to a pale green with age, stared at the humans with obvious disgust. "I am High Hunter Morgval of the Council. You have violated Crusade space. Explain yourselves before you are destroyed." Colonel Wright stepped forward. "We come representing Earth and humanity. We have Commander Zexcor aboard, and we propose a meeting." The elder's 3 eyes widened. "Zexcor lives, and he allows himself to be transported by prey?" "Not prey," Frank Miller said, stepping into view. "Equals. That's why we've come. To establish that humans will not be hunted. We are not prey, and we never will be." High Hunter Morgval seemed about to order an attack when Zexcor was brought to the communication area. The Crusade commander stood tall despite his prisoner status. "High Hunter," Zexcor said formally. "These humans have proven themselves to be unlike any species we have encountered. They fight not just with strength but with intelligence that exceeds our own in many ways. I recommend the Council meet with them." There was a long silence as Morgval considered this unprecedented situation. Finally, he said, "You may approach the third moon. A delegation will meet you there. Any aggressive action will result in your immediate destruction." The communication ended. Richard Johnson looked at his weapons display nervously. "They have over 50 warships in range. And we have something they've never seen," Susan replied. "A prey species that doesn't run." The meeting took place in an ancient stone structure on the barren third moon of the Crusade homeworld. 5 members of the High Hunt Council sat on elevated seats, looking down at the human delegation. Frank, Colonel Wright, Dr. Hernandez, and Major Clark represented Earth. "We have reviewed the reports of your resistance," Morgval began. "It is unexpected. Humans have a long history of adapting to challenges," Dr. Hernandez explained. "When faced with stronger predators in our evolution, We developed tools and tactics. We became persistence hunters, able to pursue prey over long distances. These traits served us well when your people came to hunt us. Another council member leaned forward. You suggest we should not hunt your kind? We suggest, Colonel Wright said firmly, that any further aggression against Earth will be met with a response you won't enjoy. We don't want war, but we will finish one if necessary. The council members clicked their jaw spikes in what Zexcor had told them was a sign of agitation. For 50,000 years, the Crusade have been the supreme hunters of the galaxy, Morgval said. Our entire society is built on this truth. Perhaps it's time for your society to evolve, Frank suggested, just as humans did. The negotiations continued for 3 days. The Crusade were proud and resistant to change, but they were not fools. The human ships in their system represented a species that had gone from primitive technology to interstellar travel in just 1 year. A species that had defeated their best hunters and captured one of their most decorated commanders. Finally, an agreement was reached. The Crusade would recognize Earth as a protected world. Humans would not be classified as prey, but as a fellow hunter species. In return, humans would share certain technologies and allow limited cultural exchange. As the human delegation prepared to return to their ships, Morgval approached Frank privately. You were the first, the elder said. The first human to kill a Crusade hunter. Frank nodded cautiously. I was defending my home. As any worthy hunter would. Morgval extended a ceremonial dagger, its handle made from what looked like bone. Among the Crusade, when a younger hunter proves himself against an elder, a gift is traditional. Frank accepted the dagger with appropriate solemnity. Thank you. I hope our species can learn from each other. That remains to be seen, Morgval said. But you have earned the right to try. 5 years passed. The peace between humans and Crusade held, though tensions remained. Earth recovered from the invasion and used alien technology to advance rapidly. The first human colony ships were already heading to nearby star systems. Frank Miller returned to his role as ambassador, now representing Earth to the entire Galactic Assembly. A coalition of species that the humans had been surprised to discover existed beyond Crusade space. Many of these species had suffered under Crusade raids for centuries and viewed humans with a mixture of awe and gratitude. Karen Peterson oversaw the joint human-Crusade security force, tasked with maintaining the fragile peace. Her experience, tracking the aliens during the war, made her uniquely qualified for the role. Commander Zexcor, now released from captivity, had become an advocate for reform among his people. The experience of being prey had changed him profoundly. When he met Frank at the Galactic Assembly headquarters, there was mutual respect between former enemies. Your people continue to surprise us, Zexcor said, as they walked through the great hall. Already you have colonies and your technology advances at an alarming rate. We adapt, Frank said simply. It's what humans do best. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent message. A new threat had appeared at the edge of known space. Massive ships of unknown design destroying everything in their path. The assembly was in panic. Species that had been enemies for millennia faced extinction together. In this desperate hour, all eyes turned to the alliance of the most unlikely partners, humans and Crusade. It seems, Zexcor said grimly, that we will hunt together now. Frank nodded, already thinking of strategies. And may whatever's out there beware. They're about to discover what happens when the galaxy's deadliest hunters work together. As the assembly prepared for war, a new chapter in galactic history began. Humans had arrived on the cosmic stage not as victims or conquerors but as survivors, and they would survive this too.